Throughout history, great cities have risen on the back of commerce, their names echoing through the ages. But for every Rome or Constantinople, there are dozens of others once mighty hubs of trade that have since vanished, swallowed by sand sea, or the relentless march of time. These are the forgotten capitals of commerce, empires built on spices, gold, and ambition. Today, we uncover 20 of these lost centers of wealth and the wild facts behind their disappearance. Our journey begins with Tyre, an island fortress in modern-day Lebanon. Its wealth wasn't built on gold or silver, but on something far more bizarre: the humble sea snail. From the glands of thousands of murex snails, Tyrian artisans extracted a purple dye so rare and vibrant it became the color of royalty. This Tyrian purple was literally worth more than its weight in gold, making Tyre an ancient superpower of luxury goods. But its island location, which made it nearly impregnable, also made it a target. After a legendary 7-month siege, Alexander the Great finally conquered Tyre by building a causeway to its shores, an act of engineering that forever connected it to the mainland and marked the beginning of its slow decline. Next, we travel east into the Syrian desert to Palmyra, the bride of the desert. Situated perfectly between the Roman and Persian empires, Palmyra became the ultimate middleman. Camel caravans, laden with silks from China and spices from India, had to pass through its gates. Palmyrene merchants grew fantastically wealthy by taxing this trade, transforming a desert oasis into a breathtaking city of colonnaded streets and grand temples. Its power peaked under the legendary Queen Zenobia, who challenged Rome itself. But this defiance was its undoing. The Romans crushed her rebellion, sacked the city, and Palmyra's role as a vital trade hub evaporated, leaving its magnificent ruins to be slowly reclaimed by the desert sands. From the desert, we sail to the Indian Ocean and the island of Zanzibar. Known as the Spice Island, its story is drenched in the fragrant aroma of cloves and the bitter history of human suffering. In the 19th century, Zanzibar produced over 70% of the world's cloves, a spice so valuable it drove global economies. But this wealth was built on a brutal foundation. Zanzibar was also the main hub for the East African slave trade, a market where ivory and human lives were traded with equal ferocity. When the British abolished the slave trade, Zanzibar's economic engine sputtered, and its commercial dominance faded. Deep in the jungles of Southeast Asia, an empire thrived that you've probably never heard of, Srivijaya. Based in Sumatra, this maritime powerhouse controlled the two most critical shipping lanes in the world, the Malacca and Sunda Straits. Srivijaya operated like a modern-day toll booth for the ancient world. Every ship that passed through its waters had to dock and pay a tax. For centuries, this simple but effective strategy made Srivijaya immensely powerful, dominating trade between China, India, and the Middle East. But its power was tied to the sea, and as rival ports emerged and naval powers shifted, the empire's influence waned, disappearing so completely that its existence was only rediscovered by historians in the 20th century. Let's rewind 4,500 years to ancient India, to the city of Lothal. Here, archaeologists discovered one of the world's earliest known dockyards, a marvel of engineering from the Indus Valley civilization. The builders of Lothal possessed an incredible understanding of tidal patterns, creating a lock gate system to allow ships to dock regardless of the tide. This port connected a vast inland civilization to the sea routes of the Persian Gulf, trading in beads, gems, and ivory. But the very river that gave Lothal life also brought its demise. Catastrophic floods eventually destroyed the port, silting up the channels and cutting the city off from the sea it once mastered. Buried beneath the sands of Oman lies a city of legend, Uber, the Atlantis of the sands. For centuries, it was a vital oasis on the incense trail, a fortress city where caravans loaded with precious frankincense would rest before their long journey to the Mediterranean. The Quran speaks of a magnificent city of pillars, punished by God for its wickedness. For a long time, many believed it was just a myth. But in the 1990s, using satellite imagery, archaeologists located the ruins. They discovered that Uber was built over a massive limestone cavern. The weight of the city, combined with the gradual depletion of the underground water that drew caravans there, caused the ground to collapse, swallowing the fortress whole and preserving its myth for millennia. In ancient texts, like the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, a Greek maritime guide, there are mentions of a bustling African port named Rapta. It was described as a major trade center on the East African coast, exporting ivory and tortoise shells. Roman coins and goods have been found all along the Tanzanian coast, confirming extensive trade with the empire. But here's the mystery. Despite the clear historical records, the exact location of Rapta has never been found. Was it washed away by a tsunami? Did a river change its course and bury it in silt? Rapta remains one of archaeology's greatest puzzles, the missing metropolis of ancient Africa. Imagine a spice so desired that it threatened to bankrupt the world's greatest empire. That was the story of Muziris, an ancient port on the coast of Kerala in India. Muziris was the gateway for black pepper to the Roman world. Roman ships, guided by the monsoon winds, would arrive laden with gold and return with holds full of pepper. The trade was so intense that the Roman historian Pliny complained that India was draining the empire of its fortunes. But around the 4th century, Muziris vanishes from historical records. Geological evidence suggests a massive flood or earthquake may have altered the coastline, wiping the legendary pepper port off the map. Back in India, on the coast of Gujarat stood Cambay, the jewel of India's west coast. For centuries, it was a thriving center for manufacturing and trade, especially famous for its intricate agate bead-making workshops. These beads, along with textiles and gemstones, were exported across the Indian Ocean to Egypt, Arabia, and Persia. Travelers described its markets as overflowing with goods from every corner of the known world. However, Cambay's harbor, like so many others, was a victim of nature. Over time, heavy silting made the port inaccessible to large ocean-going vessels, and trade slowly shifted to newer, deeper ports like Surat, leaving Cambay a shadow of its former self. In modern-day Eritrea, on the Red Sea coast, lay the port of Agilis. This was the primary gateway to the sea for the powerful Aksumite Empire of Ethiopia. From Agilis, Aksum exported ivory, gold, and exotic animals, connecting the heart of Africa with the vast trade networks of the Mediterranean, the Persian Gulf, and India. It was a cosmopolitan hub where different cultures, languages, and goods converged. The decline of Aksumite power and the rise of Arab dominance in the Red Sea cut Agilis off from its trade routes, leading to its eventual abandonment and burial beneath layers of earth. On the Aegean coast of modern-day Turkey was the ancient Greek city of Miletus. More than just a trading post, Miletus was an intellectual and colonial powerhouse. Its merchants sailed across the Mediterranean and the Black Sea, and the city became so influential that it founded over 80 colonies of its own, from Egypt to the shores of Crimea. It was a cradle of Western philosophy and science. But its prosperity was built on its two harbors. When the river that fed them silted up, Miletus was left landlocked miles from the sea. Cut off from the maritime world that it had once dominated, the city's influence withered away. Let's return to Southeast Asia, to a city that once controlled half the world's spice trade, Malacca. Its strategic position on the strait that bears its name made it the most important choke point in the world for maritime trade. All ships carrying cloves from the Moluccas, pepper from Sumatra, and silks from China had to pass through Malacca. Whoever ruled this city effectively controlled the spice routes. The Portuguese, Dutch, and British all fought fiercely for it. But the opening of new trade routes and the rise of rival ports like Singapore eventually diminished Malacca's strategic importance, turning a global trade capital into a historic but quieter city. Deep in West Africa, on the bend of the Niger River, rose the city of Gao. As a southern terminus of the trans-Saharan trade routes, Gao became the capital of the Great Songhai Empire. Camel caravans arrived from the north, carrying solid commodity as valuable as gold and left laden with gold, ivory, and slaves from the south. Gao was a legendary city of wealth, its markets bustling with traders from across Africa and the Middle East. Its fall was swift and brutal. An invasion from Morocco in 1591, armed with gunpowder weapons, shattered the Songhai Empire, and Gao's golden age came to an abrupt end. On the coast of modern-day Benin lies Ouidah, a name synonymous with the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade. It was one of the largest slave trading ports in Africa, a point of no return for millions. But Ouidah was unique. It was also a major center for the voodoo religion. The commerce in human lives was deeply intertwined with spiritual rituals. The city's wealth was built entirely on this brutal trade, and when slavery was finally abolished in the 19th century, Ouidah's economic reason for being vanished, leaving behind a haunting legacy of forts and memorials. On the Egyptian Red Sea coast, at the very edge of the Roman Empire, was the port of Berenike. Founded by the Ptolemies, it was a remote but vital link in the trade with the East. Archaeologists here have unearthed a staggering mix of goods: Roman wine amphorae, peppercorns from India, textiles from the Arabian Peninsula, and even coconuts from Southeast Asia. It was a true melting pot of global trade. Berenike thrived for centuries, but was eventually abandoned as trade patterns shifted and the Roman Empire's control over its eastern provinces weakened. In southern Africa, atop a sandstone hill, sat Mapungubu. This was the capital of the first kingdom in the region, flourishing around 1,000 years ago. The people of Mapungubu controlled the trade in gold and ivory from the interior, trading with Swahili merchants on the coast who, in turn, were connected to India and Persia. The discovery of a golden rhinoceros figurine here attests to the kingdom's wealth and sophisticated craftsmanship. But climatic changes, likely a mini ice age that brought cooler and drier conditions, made the area uninhabitable. The people of Mapungubu dispersed, and the Hill of Gold was abandoned. Marco Polo, a man who had seen the great cities of the world, once described this next city as one of the 2 greatest ports he had ever seen. He was talking about Quanzhou in China. During the Song and Yuan dynasties, Quanzhou was the bustling eastern terminus of the maritime Silk Road. Its harbor was filled with ships from across Asia and the Middle East. It was a cosmopolitan city with mosques, Hindu temples, and Christian churches alongside Chinese temples. But a combination of imperial policies that restricted maritime trade and the silting of its harbor led to its decline, with other ports like Shanghai and Guangzhou taking its place. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived in Mexico, they were stunned by what they found. The Aztec capital, Tenochtitlan, was an island city larger and cleaner than any in Europe. Its main market at Tlatelolco hosted over 60,000 people daily, a staggering concentration of commerce. Goods from every corner of the Aztec Empire were traded here, from tropical feathers and jaguar pelts to obsidian, chocolate, and corn. The market was so organized and vast, it left the Spaniards speechless. But this vibrant world was annihilated. The Spanish siege and subsequent destruction of Tenochtitlan wiped out not just a city, but an entire system of Mesoamerican trade. In the inland delta of the Niger River, we find a truly unique city, Gengeno. It is one of the oldest known cities in sub-Saharan Africa, thriving for over 1,600 years. What's remarkable is that archaeologists have found no evidence of palaces or a central ruling elite. Instead, it seems to have been a cluster of communities specializing in different crafts: fishing, pottery, metalworking, that engaged in a massive regional trade network. They traded fish for stone and grain for salt and gold. Gengeno shows that a complex urban society could thrive on cooperation and trade without a king. Its decline is linked to the rise of nearby Timbuktu and a shift in trade routes. Finally, we arrive at Siraf, on the Persian Gulf coast of Iran. During the early Islamic Golden Age, Siraf was a legendary port. Its sailors and merchants were pioneers of long-distance maritime trade, establishing networks that stretched from Africa to China. They were the masters of the Indian Ocean. Stories from this period, which later inspired tales like Sinbad the Sailor, spoke of the immense wealth and exotic goods flowing through Siraf. The city's fortunes ended dramatically. A massive earthquake in the 10th century devastated the port, and it never recovered its former glory. From snail dye to desert tolls, from pepper fortunes to golden hills, these lost cities tell a powerful story. They remind us that empires can be built on a single commodity, that geography is both a blessing and a curse, and that even the greatest centers of wealth can vanish, leaving behind only whispers and ruins. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the world's forgotten trade capitals. If you found this exploration fascinating, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more dives into the mysteries of history. See you next time.